So you may be wondering how I ended up in this situation. Well, let me tell you. I decided to turbo my right-hand drive Miata, but first I have to uninstall all the stock parts that are gonna be getting replaced with aftermarket ones. And here are all the parts for the turbo kit, plus all the supporting mods. And big thank you to Njuka Racing for helping me source all the parts for the turbo kit. I'll be going through all the parts in the next video because I originally intended on this video being one big part. But with the garage being like 130 degrees, I've been working a lot slower than I originally anticipated. So I decided to split it up into two parts, so this video is going to be on installing everything, and in the next video, we're gonna be installing the turbo kit. Also, the turbo kit that I ended up going with was the ISR Performance 1.6 liter turbo kit that just came out for the Miata. And yes, I have been waiting for it. But first, a word from our sponsor. You've probably noticed by now that I'm a pretty hyperactive individual, and it wasn't until high school that I got diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, otherwise known as ADHD. And if you think I'm hyperactive now, imagine me in a classroom setting. I could not sit still. I'd space out during exams and lectures and hyperfixate on random distractions during exams. My teachers would be confused that I placed in all AP classes, yet I would get distracted over a pair of shoes that looked like Oreos and forget to write my name during an exam. And it wasn't until my history teacher pointed out that this might be more than a student that doesn't like school. I loved learning, and she saw that, but she also saw the pacing, the fidgeting, the frustration of my inability to focus. The next day, she brought in hula hoops and biking pedals for any student that needed to just let out their energy. And I realized then that I wasn't the problem. I just needed the proper outlets to support my different way of processing information. It was time for a lifestyle change, followed by a period of self-reflection to better understand why I act the way I act. Fast forward 7 years, and I've come a long way. I realized that self-reflection is just the first step of a brand new journey in order to better understand yourself and how to correct certain behaviors in order to live the life that you want. And of course, while getting help for mental health struggles can be transformative, many people still struggle to take the first step, and that's where BetterHelp, the sponsor of today's video, comes in. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. First, you go to their website, answer a few questions, and BetterHelp will match you with a professional that has years of experience helping people with struggles just like yours. And the best part is you can do it from your phone or computer via phone call, video chat, messaging, however you feel comfortable, and it is the easiest possible way to start talking to a therapist. Visit betterhelp.com/AnnieXMoose or choose Annie X Moose Garage during sign up and enjoy a special discount on your first month. And now, without further ado, let's get into the video. I imported this car from Japan, and it has been garage kept its entire life. Like, I'm talking 26,000 original miles, and yes, it is stock. Aside from the manual transmission swap I did, as well as an exhaust and just some minor audio upgrades. So we're working off of like a basic platform here. We don't have a built engine, so since it is stock, it's around like 80 wheel horsepower, the base of the base, and you guys know these cars are super light, so any additional horsepower will make these cars extremely quick. But over here is the entire turbo kit. This is every single part that I'm gonna need to boost the Miata. Let's pop the hood. Look at my 2 JZ swap 1,000 horsepower Miata. Don't be jealous, guys, don't be jealous. I think we're just gonna start out by just draining the coolant system for right now, and then just start working to just get everything out of the engine bay and just clear up space. So almost got the bumper off. I did want to note something. Already broke the bolt. And I point this out because with short form content, I never got to show you guys all of my mess ups, and I mess up a lot. Like, I break a lot. So here's to not being perfect and not knowing what I'm doing. Here's the tab removers. And I just put my foot in PB Blaster. Busted out the big Milwaukee because desperate times call for desperate measures. Pitch out. I don't know why the bumper on the Miata is so difficult to remove. It is so sturdy that you can go rally in the Sahara Desert and this bumper will not come off. Like, it is held down by so many tabs, bolts, and nuts. Like, it's so sturdy. Compared to my Silvia, my entire Silvia is literally held on by zip ties, and it's fine.
What are they planning on racing with? Hopes and dreams?
So what I'm gonna do is take off the wheels, the fender liners, the fenders, and the bumper all at once and just get it all off. I'm also using a regular socket because if I use the impact rated ones, it's gonna mess up my wheels, and this is literally my child. These T's are my child, so we will not be damaging those. the front end is now essentially taken off. I have everything off for the fenders except for the fact that the pinch weld adapter is sitting on the fender right now, and the bolts on that very bottom, the only 2 bolts that are left are stripped. So I have a bolt remover coming tomorrow. That should essentially take care of the fenders. So in the meantime, I think what I'm gonna do is just start taking off the manifold as well as the downpipe and the exhaust and just start clearing out the engine bay. And then I'm gonna get into draining the coolant. We're gonna have a hurricane. Like today. So chances of my power going out is very high. I really hope not, so I could actually start getting some more stuff done on the car, but Mother Nature, my friends. All right, so over here is my stock downpipe. That has to be removed. And then over here is my exhaust. This is the iStar Performance exhaust. We will be replacing this with an iStar Performance downpipe. I think what I'm just gonna do is just unbolt the exhaust. I haven't decided if I'm just gonna use a sawzall and just cut the downpipe here, or if I should just like actually just take off the exhaust and a downpipe in 2 different pieces. Whatever's really easier. So one other thing that I want to get to is figure out why my transmission lately has not been going into reverse. And I heard that it's actually a finicky thing with Miatas where you have to have a spacer, some type of washer in between the reverse switch that is in charge of the light, the reverse light. So I've been told to like try to take it out and then push it back in with a washer on it and see maybe if the reverse will come back. I'm hoping that that is the problem. The other problem it could be is that the shifter bushing is somehow trapped in the shifter turret, because when I did get this manual transmission from my friend's Miata, she didn't have a bushing on the end of it, but sometimes like it dissolves or whatever the case is. So I'm hoping that's not the problem and that it's just a simple fix with the reverse light. Spiders down here. I really don't feel like taking this exhaust off. All right, so the downpipe is now off. I'm gonna keep the exhaust on, and for the manifold, I'm just gonna take out the air box first because it would just make it so much easier. I don't know why I didn't do that before. Have the battery disconnected, and now I'm just gonna take out the box. Oh, I'm gonna totally lose track of all these bolts. All the bumper hardware away, but yeah, it went downhill after that. Oh wait, the box. Feels like a reward.
It's like a reward.
That is an ugly manifold. The O2 sensor is out. Now to get the manifold off. Yeah, this is going in the trash. This thing is a lot of surface rust, but I mean, honestly, it was easy to take off, so I'll take my W's when I can get them. Well, fast forward a week and a half, and let me tell you, nothing got done on the Miata, like at all. And that's because we got a surprise visit from Hurricane BERYL, and it hit us over in Texas pretty hard. I had no power for 10 days. It was rough. We had to put a hold on the Miata series. I literally couldn't do anything in the garage. It came to the point where the house was over 95 degrees. My animals were super hot. I was super hot, and nothing got done. And I'm not gonna lie, my house got hit. So this tree right here got pulled out of the ground, fell over to the fence, hit my post, and broke my gate. Now, lucky for me, my brother brought his friends over and we hopped onto the gate until it moderately got flattened. And now I have someone coming over to fix the gate as best as they can because getting a whole new gate is extremely expensive, and we had some other minor damages on the house as well. Luckily, the gate isn't too bad. It's mostly these wooden pieces here, and then some metal work needs to be done to get it flat enough to be able to go onto the rails. I actually tied the winch of my truck onto the tree and pulled the tree out of the ground and pushed it back into where it's supposed to be. I don't know how I'm gonna fix that, but I actually bought a chainsaw and cut up the tree as best as I can because it actually went from over here all the way over to the other side of the street and it was blocking the road. So yeah, it's been a rough 2 weeks, but I'm ready to get back to the Miata. Oh, I wish I was taller. I'm on my tippy toes to get it. All right, so I just drained the oil and I drained the coolant system, so now I'm gonna be taking out the radiator hose and taking out the radiator from up top while trying to keep the condenser in because I don't feel like filling up Freon. I think I decided that I'm not pulling the engine, I'm just gonna be lowering the subframe, so hopefully that'll be less work than pulling out the whole entire engine. Alright, so the radiator is about to come out. All you have to do to uninstall it is just a circlip over here, circlip over on this side, and I know circlips are the bane of my existence. 10mm bolt over here, remove the radiator hose, 10mm bolt on the opposite side, and on the back of the radiator you have 1, 2, 3, 4 10mm bolts. And now to just remove the bolt at the very top of the radiator, and then the radiator will be ready to come out. Fast forward to the next day, this morning I actually went and dropped off my manifold and my downpipe to get ceramic coated. I went with a black color because they had it in stock, and I really hope that it only takes a week because this turbo series is already delayed and I'm just trying to get it done as soon as possible because there are a lot more projects in line to get worked on. I decided not to ceramic coat the turbo just yet, so I'm gonna be using a turbo blanket in the meantime, but let's go ahead and see all the work that I got done yesterday. I'm honestly really proud of the progress because I started super late in the day. All right, so here's how the Miata is currently looking. So much room for activities. So I started out by taking out the entire air box, then I took out the manifold and the downpipe, which are getting ceramic coated, and then I drained the coolant and the oil and took out the radiator as well as the fan. I left the condenser in here, and I actually already took out the sway bar, which is right over there. I'm quite literally collecting every single stock Miata part to the point where I think if I buy like a project Miata, I can replace all the parts so it's like a new Miata at that point. That might be a project for the future. Now what I'm doing today is gonna be dropping the subframe because I decided not to pull the engine out, but I still need to drill the oil pan. So we have to drop the subframe. In order to do that, I did not want to buy an engine hoist because I just did not want to make that expense right now, even though I know that I have to get one. I was fortunate enough that at my previous shop, I had neighbors that had an engine hoist that literally just left it at my garage, which is awesome. So went ahead and got this engine support bar from Harbor Freight. It only cost like $60, and this is gonna sit on top of my engine bay. I went ahead and bolted the fenders back on because the support bar is actually gonna be sitting right on them, and for better support, I thought it'd probably be smarter to put these bad boys back on. I actually only needed to take off the passenger fender, but I ended up taking off the driver's side as well, so I just made myself do extra work for no reason. So here's what I did not show you guys. This is the picture off of Enjuka's website of the ISR Performance Turbo Kit for the 1.6 liter. So this is exactly how my engine bay is going to look like after the turbo kit. Now that picture is off a left-hand drive car, so let me show you guys the key differences of what it's gonna look like on a right-hand drive car. To be honest, there's not many. The biggest difference that the master cylinder is not located over here. It's actually my windshield wiper fluid, and my master cylinder is over on the left-hand side where the driver's side is. Now, if you can't tell, the intercooler piping is actually gonna be having to go through there. So I'm gonna have to drill a hole. So once that hole is drilled, the intercooler piping is gonna come down here and then into the intercooler. Which means after I drop the subframe, I'm gonna have to remove my passenger fender because I'm gonna have to drill a hole into my baby. It's all for the We're not gonna make fun of my turbo impression. But honestly, guys, I am super excited. Let's get into it. Show you guys the plan of attack here. So we're gonna have to lower the subframe. I don't want to fully take it out. What I'm trying to avoid doing is draining the power steering fluid. I really do not feel like doing that. And these hard lines, as well as this line, is power steering fluid. So what I plan to do is unbolt the brackets that are holding both of these lines. So there's one right up there and that rusty one right over there. This should make the lines loose, so I should have more wiggle room with them. As for the steering rack, I'm just going to unbolt that bottom bolt, and then I'll take my hydraulic table, put it underneath of the subframe, and lower the subframe about 2 inches. And in order to remove the subframe is just 4 bolts, one at the very back on each side, and the ones holding down the engine mounts. Those are the only bolts that are holding down the subframe, and then it's time to work on the oil pan. There's the lovely oil pan that we will be removing. It's kind of like an L, so it starts here, goes over, and then goes down, and there are 18 bolts holding down that oil pan. But we need to remove it because we need to weld on the bung. Well, look at that. I was actually right. There's only one thing that I forgot, and that was the dipstick. But thanks to Miata forums, because I would not have found this diagram. This is straight from the shop manual, and it literally lists the removal process the exact same order that I plan to do the Miata in. I just forgot about the dipstick. I'm honestly surprised that it said I was right. However, I don't think it's gonna go as smoothly as the manual made it look like. I'm on my 5th or 6th cup of coffee. I've got a decent amount of stuff done. However, I refuse to go to bed until I get the subframe out. Let me show you guys my progress so far. So as you see, my oil pan has completely no bolts left on it. I surprisingly removed all the bolts without even having to drop the subframe. But even though all the bolts are removed, you still cannot take out the oil pan until the subframe is dropped. Now over here, we have all the bolts for the oil pan. There are 18 bolts holding down the oil pan and then 4 transmission bolts that bolt to the oil pan. Yeah, there was a decent amount of hardware holding that oil pan down. Now for the final step of the night, to remove the subframe. And all I have to do to remove the subframe is 6 bolts, 3 on each side, 1 over here, 1 up there, and 1 for the engine mount. It technically should be simple enough. And again, I'm gonna be lowering it on the hydraulic table, and hopefully it won't really give me any problems because I have had problems with this table before. It's currently 3 a.m. here. Things have changed. I have changed. I decided not to use the hydraulic table anymore. It just doesn't have enough clearance for me to pry out the oil pan. Instead, I decided to use these. Check it out. I have a set of two, so one's holding up the back of the subframe and one's holding up the front. This will give me a lot more clearance to the jack stands, and it's probably safer than this. I also discovered 2 more bolts up there that I have to take out, which means that there's a total of 10 bolts to be taken out for the subframe. At this point, my goal is to just get the subframe out before daylight. I think that's an attainable goal, but to be honest, I put myself in this situation because of procrastination. But I don't know, I think we got this. I think we can do it. So yesterday I pulled an all-nighter and I uninstalled the oil pan, and let me say, it was difficult. And that's mainly because Mazda does not actually use gaskets, they use RTV sealant. And it was stuck on there, but once I finally pried out the RTV sealant, then I realized it was stuck on the baffle. But it was only stuck on the left side of the baffle, so eventually I pried it off. So here's the oil pan, it got stuck on this left side over here. This is the baffle, and this is your oil pickup. Because Mazda does not make any gaskets for these, I will have to use RTV sealant in order to seal it back up, and then I do have gaskets for the ends of it. But today I'm gonna have to clean that oil pan, remove the baffle, and remove the oil pickup, because tomorrow I have an appointment with a welder in order to get the oil bung welded, and I need it to be TIG welded, and since I haven't started learning welding yet, I plan on doing that next month. I'm gonna have to outsource it. Once I get this uninstalled, I think I'm just gonna clean it out with some Simple Green. The oil bung is for my bottom mount turbo line kit, and it's gonna be installed right over here, but I have to make sure that they don't hit the baffle as well as the oil pickup, so it's gonna have to be welded on pretty precisely. Alright, so this is a completely new experience, so I'm letting the oil pan drain out into my oil tank. I say this because my old shop was on city water and sewage, and my current shop is on the same thing as my house, which is a septic system. But with a septic system, you also are very, very, very specific about what you put down your drains and your toilets, and I'm very used to washing all of my parts in the sink, and I never really had this problem before. Motor oil is one of the most toxic things that you be putting down your drains, so even having just some residual oil going down the sink, I'm not really comfortable with at the moment. I'm trying to find a way of cleaning the oil pan without having to wash it in the sink. After I let the oil pan drain out into the reservoir, I'm gonna be using some Super Clean, and this is essentially a degreaser. It's the same thing as like Purple Power and Simple Green, and hopefully that should get off all the grease and oil that's left over. I think I should have taken the baffle out before I laid it over here. I'm gonna let it drain for a little bit longer, and then we're gonna get into cleaning it. So straight off the bat, wiping it down with a paper towel, got rid of most of the oil. Now I'm just gonna go in with some Super Clean to degrease it, and then take off any of the extra sealant that was left over. I don't know why I procrastinated this, because honestly, it wasn't that bad. I got the oil bung welded onto the oil pan. Let me show you guys exactly where I had it installed because the location of the bung is actually very specific on the oil pan so that you don't hit the baffle or the oil pickup line. So let me show you guys close up exactly where you should be putting your oil bung. And by the way, you can drill it or weld it on. I had it welded on because it's just safer that way. Drilling and tapping it might put shards in your oil pan, of metal shards in your oil pan. So probably better to weld it, but that's just my personal opinion. All right, so here is the oil pan. This is your baffle. This is the oil pickup. The oil pickup actually sits pretty flush with the brim of the oil pan. So it comes out about 1.5 inches down, and then it shoots right out into this area all the way down to the opening. And if you see here, this is where I got my oil bung welded on. So it's right against that wall, right on the line. It's actually easier to see it on this side. So you see this line on the oil pan, it actually goes right to the right of it. So you're not on a curve, but you don't hit the baffle or you don't hit the oil pickup that sits right here. So you may be wondering why the oil pan is on the table instead of on the car. Well, let me tell you. Let me start off by saying that I immediately regret not pulling the engine. It would have saved me so much more time. So while I was installing the oil pan, the baffle plate had slipped in the very last second, smearing gasket maker everywhere, and because I don't want this to leak, I am redoing the entire install. But I am learning stuff on the way, because this is a learning moment, for sure. Now let me go over some of the things that I will be adjusting to when I will be reinstalling the oil pan. First things first, the baffle plate. Now I had rebended it after I took it out to, you know, make it work with the oil pan, and even though I thought that it lined up, it didn't. So, ended up buying a new baffle plate, and after seeing this one in person, yeah, this one's bent, for sure. So, glad we have that taken care of, and now there should be no alignment issues. I also had mentioned that before I had 2 reference bolts to hold in the baffle plate and just help with aligning it. But it wasn't enough, so I ended up switching to 4 bolts in total, which I will be installing onto the bottom of the engine. Before, there were only 2 in the front of the baffle plate, so now I'm gonna be putting 4 in total, so it should be more like evenly dispersed. Also, since I am redoing everything, I decided that oil pickup, I'm gonna get a new gasket for it, because I was gonna reuse the old one, but I should be responsible. And lastly, I learned, okay, well, I kind of had suspicion, but I put too much gasket maker on. We learned. I will not be putting this much RTV the next time around, so lesson learned. I'm gonna wrap this up, but I will see you guys in the next video where we're gonna be finally installing the turbo kids. I can finally have a fast Miata again. It was never fast to begin with. And as always, love you, car family.